All right, let's begin our fourth and final, our fourth and final video over the vocabulary for Chapter 7. We had gone all the way through number 50 in our last video. Today we're going to take a look at the art and literature that is found in America during this period of time. And we'll start off with the definition of realism. Now, realism, as you can see there, is defined as nothing more. By the way, I'm going to use the red color for this video. I don't know why I like it more than the black. Nothing more or less than the truthful treatment of material. Back in the late 60s, long before your time, early 70s, there was an expression, keep it real, man. I personally never said it because I never was that cool, but it was sort of a continuation of this. Again, realism, nothing more or less than the truthful treatment of material. Taking a subject and treating it truthfully, not making up stories, not embellishing it, not making it sound better than what it was, just telling things as they occurred. This became the leading literary style of the early 1900s. All right, let's continue. As I'm waiting for the page to load up here, we're going to look at some of the writers of this era. Then we'll look at some of the artists of the era as well. Now, let's begin with Horatio Alger. As you can see right there. Terribly sorry, let me go back one. I don't know why I did that. I do apologize for this. It should jump back in a second. We're waiting. We're waiting. There it is. How exciting. You gotta keep in mind, this is only my third time to do this, so I'm sorry, my fourth time to do this, and I'm still messing it up terribly. I'll get it right one of these days. Horatio Alger. There we go, right there. And of course, there are the days in which he lived. All right, I'm back. Sorry, someone had come to the door and I had to pause the video for a few moments while I dealt with them. Before I get to Horatio Alger and the rest of the writers, maybe mention a couple things about literature in the early 1900s. Because of immigration, our cities grew. Because of industrializations, our cities grew. Urbanization brought about all kinds of problems. I mean, we've talked about those already. But one of the things that it did do that was a positive was provide an avenue for literature. You had millions of people in cities living closer together, and a lot of children were going to school somewhat, off and on at least, and they were beginning to learn how to read because of the new forms of communication. The telegraph was still around, the invention of the telephone, the phonograph is not too far away, because of the ready availability of newspapers, magazines, and dime novels, small little paperbacks you can buy for a dime. More and more people had more and more to read. And since there was so much to read, more and more people wanted to learn how to read, and so literacy skyrocketed during this period of time. Now, what we're going to look at is some of the individuals who were responsible for some of the great American literature of the period of time, and by the way, still some of the great American literature of all time. Go back to Horatio Alger. He wrote novels praising hard work and discipline. In fact, most of his novels were about a rags to riches story. For example, his first novel, which was named Ragged Dick, and this can all be found on page 130 of your Jarrett book, which was written in 1868, was his most popular and remained in print for 40 years or so. The storyline for each novel was really roughly the same. You got a poor kid with very few prospects in life who is able to improve his position in life, to get a job, get an education, whatever the case may be, through hard work and help from his friends and adults. And that story type, that ability to achieve the American dream was a very popular genre during the period of time. Our next author, Mark Twain. Mark Twain, of course, is known for many things. We are familiar with him in coining the term the Gilded Age from a book he wrote entitled The Gilded Age. But he was so much more than that. He reflected, as it states here, the differences between pre-Civil War and post-Civil War America, particularly up and down the Mississippi. A lot of his books, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, depict life in and around the Civil War, but mainly up and down the Mississippi. He associated the Old South with Romanticism and the present with realism. His books are still quite popular. His greatest work, Huckleberry Finn, treated the moral conflicts, or looked at the moral conflicts of slavery. And I'm not sure if we still require these books to be read. I know I read several of them when I was younger. I'm not sure if we still do. If we don't, it is a tragedy. He was a great writer, depicted a period of time in our nation's history from a point of view that we really could benefit from. Okay, let's move on. Number 54, William Dean Howells, and there, of course, were the years that he lived, was an important magazine editor who promoted realism within his magazines. Now, he wrote a novel called The Rise of Silas Lapham, Lapham, and again, this is on page 130, or page 131 of the Jarrett book. Now, this is notable because his novel, and a lot of things he wrote, describe the struggles that the newly rich faced when dealing with the old rich, the new money and the old money. And of course, we had literally millions of people coming to America and making money. So there was a large new class of rich people developing in this country, and Howells depicted some of the problems, some of the realism of that situation. 55, Jack London. Oh, great writer. He is most known for his book, The Call of the Wild, okay, which depicted a dog living with or surviving with a wolf pack in Alaska. And this is all set in and around the Klondike Gold Rush, which, by the way, Jack London actually participated in the Klondike Gold Rush, and it was because of those experiences he wrote a lot of books about the outdoors, adventure stories in and around that area, Alaska and the Great West. Our next one, Henry James. Each of his novels usually unfolds through the consciousness of the main character. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. Most of his stories looked at and discussed the wealthy upper classes. Now again, just like today, Americans in the early 1900s were somewhat celebrity worshipers. I mean, come on, let's face it. You look at the Kardashians, who really have no talent besides being celebrities. Paris Hilton, I mean, all she does is, I don't know what she does. I mean, all she does is be Paris Hilton. We root for celebrities. And so the celebrities of the early 1900s were often the rich, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, those captains of industry. And so Henry James novels depicted their lives. His novel, for example, The Portrait of a Lady, which was written in 1881, is about a penniless orphan, an orphan who is taken to England by a rich aunt. She, the lady in the story, marries the wrong man and has to accept the consequences of her actions. So she marries for money as opposed to love, and now she has to live with it. Katie Choplin was one of the first well-known female novelists. Her work, The Awakening, in 1899, goes into the conflict between our inward and outward selves. Think about that for a second. The main character in the book, The Awakening, is a respected wife and mother who leads a relatively routine life. Suddenly, she awakens. Again, hence the name, The Awakening. She awakens one summer when she falls in love and discovers passion. Okay? Cool stuff, right? You do everything you're supposed to do. You're the model person. And then boom, all of a sudden you meet someone who you just fall hopelessly in love with. Unfortunately for her, it wasn't her husband. And eventually she commits suicide. Not a happy ending for her. The book caused quite a scandal, as you can well imagine, and was banned from many libraries across the country. But it's that realism, which is the theme of most of, if not all of the writers of this period of time. All right, now let's take a few moments to delve into some of the art and some of the great artists of this era. And we have them on the screen. Again, a couple of pictures I'm going to mention. Whistler's Mother, painted by James Whistler. And the Gross Clinic, written by Thomas Eakins, which is numbers 58 and 60, could be found on page 131. So you may want to look them up. I didn't have time to put the pictures here or the space to put the pictures here. Okay, let's delve into these these artists in some detail. James Whistler, again, there you can see the years in which he lived, created some of the finest paintings of American art. His painting of his mother, known as Whistler's Mother, is arguably one of the greatest works, one of the greatest pieces of art by an American. Winslow Homer, known for painting scenes featuring the sea, boats, and coastlines. Again, from this era, he is probably the best known for painting those types of canvases. You can find his works all over the place. I believe there are a few of them in the White House that depict the coastlines of America. And so both Whistler and Homer, though again not as well known as Picasso and some of the other writers, some of the other painters, were just as good, and their work is just as admired today as some of those others. Now, you may not be able to buy a Picasso for less than $20 million, and you can probably buy some of Whistler's or Homer's work for less money. But again, they were great American artists, and we're starting to see the beginning of the growth of American art. Thomas Eakins, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, is another realist painter who made portraits of friends, family, and people in the arts, sciences, and medicine. And as I mentioned to you, his best-known work, The Gross Clinic, is found on page 131. Basically, it shows, the picture, looking at it right this moment, shows Dr. Gross performing surgery on a young man. Okay, while he is performing the surgery, the patient's mother, and I'm pretty much reading this from the text, cringes in the corner. Okay, you have this giant amphitheater where you have the surgeon and the patient on the floor, and then around it are seats so other surgeons, other people can watch it. This surgical amphitheater, the viewer appears to occupy a seat amongst Gross's students. So the view of the painting is from the seat in the amphitheater watching Dr. Gross perform surgery on this young man. And in the corner, you can see the young man's mother, I imagine in terror, fearing for her child's life. Pretty powerful when you think about it. The last couple we're going to look at, actually the last three, Henry Tanner was one of the more important African-American painters in this period of time. He focused on everyday scenes like a banjo lesson. Nothing fancy, just very simple things. A woman washing clothes. Two guys working on the engine of a car. Being one of the first African-American painters, his style then influenced generation of not only white but African American painters, artists for decades to come. Our last two, Frederick Remington and Charles Russell, painted and sculpted cowboys, Native Americans, landscapes, romantic scenes of the American West. And I know for a fact there are a number of Remington paintings and sculptures in the White House. They can be found all over the country. But he, more so than Russell, is well known for his romanticizing the American West, depicting cowboys on horseback watching a herd of cattle as they eat. The Native American, the noble red man, if you will, sitting in front of a fire in front of a teepee with his wife and children around him, hunting the buffalo. Landscapes where you could see the prairies, the grass blowing in the wind, the sun setting on the mountains, the Rocky Mountains. So again, these individuals I mentioned are the beginning of American art in our nation's history. Some of the greatest writers, painters, sculptors America's ever produced are mentioned in this chapter. Okay, with this we have finished the vocabulary terms in preparation for our test in a couple of days. So hopefully this has been of some value to you. Hopefully you have learned something from it, and hopefully it will help you on your test. Bye. We're gone.